Today's special guest is Sandi Mitchell. Welcome to the Thunderstocks Show. It's a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, your liberty, and your pursuit of property, just as the founding fathers would want it to be. Speaking of which, Sandi is from the state of Texas, where everything is bigger. She's got quite a few stories to tell. Can't wait to get them out. Sandi, first story I want to know is, what did you always want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an adventurer, explorer. My whole backyard was the whole world. So I went to Antarctica and I went to Africa, and my sisters were my Sherpas. And it was, yeah,
So
absolutely.
you're more of a visionary than an integrator, and they might have been your integrators,
Yes,
at least
absolutely.
in that setting.
Required to be my integrator doers.
Oh, well, di- so what did life look like for you in terms of, what was like your first job? Did you hate it, love it? How'd you feel? Like, what did your career or at least your work experience start out as?
Well, unofficially, when I was always an entrepreneur. And so when I was 10, I wanted a dog. And so my parents thought they were being very clever. And they said, look, as long as you can pay for the dog and everything the first year, all the shots, all the food, then we'll pay for the dog the rest of the year. And I did everything. I was an artist. And so I created letterheads and stationery and lemonade stands and everything. And my dog ended up living almost 18 years. So it was a great deal for me. It was fun.
Wow, that is. Hey, you knew what you're a big hairy, in this case, literally hairy, audacious
Yeah,
goal was, and
absolutely.
you hit your first BHAG pretty early. Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I
fun.
was kind of like so this is kind of a weird thing, but well, I don't know. I'm going to call it my Steve Jobs career because it was very crazy going off the weird stuff, but it all came together. My love of entrepreneurship, my love of learning, and my all the training that I got when I was in corporate, and then when I was having my own companies, of really getting this EOS business started. It was I started my company 12 years ago and EOS 6.5 years ago, and all of the disparate pieces of advertising director and selling lemonade and just all of these different things that it all came, being the chief of staff in a legal department and corporate, right? It was just everything came together to really help me see more than I could have done on my own, if I'd had a single trajectory, I think.
Yeah, it's the twists and turns and the
Yeah.
windy left hand turns along the way that kind of make the journey what it is. And I think just from an early age, you've got a knack for that artist mental flexibility to really see a landscape and make it what you want it to be. How did that transfer when you had your corporate life? Not saying anything wrong with corporate, but
Right.
typically for that creative free spirit entrepreneur, that's usually something they avoid. But you
Yeah.
went into it.
Yeah. I kind of didn't mean to. Was working, of course. I was working as a temp at American Airlines and was getting my business going on my entrepreneurial business going on the side. And they offered me so much money to come on board and flight benefits. Ties in with my
Adventurer.
desires, right?
I
Yeah.
get it.
Because I have a goal to go to every country in my lifetime. And so I had to say yes. And 3 months later, they spun Sabre off. And so, yeah, so when I started, there was just, I don't know, maybe 1,000 of us that started the business. And so every single job that I did inside the company was entrepreneurial because I became chief of staff of legal, and then I became chief of staff of HR, and then I created a corporate university and got to travel around the world, had employees all over the world. And so I got to build my entrepreneurial skills while having benefits.
Let me ask you a very serious question. How many countries have you been to so far?
52.
That's more than we have states.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because when we spun off, we got flight benefits, and they negotiated 12 years. It was about 9 years that it was good. Then it got hard to stand by. But I decided I was going to fly as far away as I could, as long as I could, so that when I didn't have flight benefits anymore, then I could go to the States. I've probably been to about 9 states. Yeah. So
But
a
but
little over a fourth of the world.
but you still call Texas your home.
Well, yeah.
Got to do it. You can take the Texan out of Texas. No, you can't. How about
No,
that? No, you can't.
I can take the girl out of Texas, but
You
not
can't take the
Texas
Texas.
out of the girl. Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. So tell me about how Apex started in 2013 and what made you decide to take that leap. I know that you're not one to say no to an adventure, but
Yeah.
typically people look at that corporate to entrepreneurial thing as a scary thing, and you might have felt the opposite. So how that go?
Yeah, I was turning 50 and or I had just turned 50 and I thought, you know what? If I don't go back into the entrepreneurial world now, I probably never will.
Mm.
And so I took my great success as creating that corporate university and thought, I'm just going to go out and start my own leadership development and training company. And I am such a hit here. I'll be a hit out there. There's a big difference in playing in a ground where everybody knows who you are and playing where no one has ever heard of you before. And so that first year was hard, but I was determined.
Mm.
I didn't want to create a plan B. So I here's where I made my first rule after my first 2 years, maybe, where I was getting every certification that I could, thinking that that would make me, better, stronger. All of a sudden, I realized, you know what? I could go bankrupt getting all of these certifications. So the certification had to give me an immediate ROI, and my clients had to be asking for what it is. And so I started collecting people who had the certifications. And if I needed that, then I would bring them into the project with me. Yeah,
Working smarter, not harder, from an HR
exactly.
perspective.
Help the scaling up without it being reliant upon me. And then about 7 years ago, we were looking at the time, we thought it was just a simple little downturn. And so I was lead faculty for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. They were one of my clients. And so I was asking all the CEOs who were taking the classes, I'm like, what else have you done besides this that was real helpful? And EOS by far was the one that came up. And so,
Really?
yeah, it was really kind of fun because if you know the Colby, I'm a 10 quick start. So I like leap.
10.
Yeah, there's not a lot of us out there. So I leap and then halfway down, I'm like, I hope there's a trampoline down at the bottoms.
I'm an 8
And
on
there
quick
was.
start, Sandy, and people
Yeah,
tell me that I'm the most,
a lot.
a
Yeah,
lot.
I get that a
Whew.
lot. Yeah. And so when I called, they're like, yeah, hey, we have a boot camp starting in 2 days. Do you want to join? And I said, yes. Yeah.
You're off.
And I loved it. I thought it was a fabulous connection with all my leadership and executive coaching that I had been doing. And then now you add in the business structure of EOS. So I feel like I've got great skills that match in together.
It's interesting to hear an HR. You had HR experience, right? You did
Yep.
led HR staffs, and I've talked to other people that are Colby certified coaches, and some admittedly against their will said they had HR background, but you seem like you don't necessarily have disdain for HR. But what do you think about Colby and its place with finding the right people in the right seat, building a team? Like, what are your thoughts on Colby? Because clearly you're familiar. 10 quick start.
Yeah. I'm a 3-3-10-3. So I summarize as fast as I can.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. I rely on others for doing the deep dives. So I hire most of the people that I hire, talking about right people, right seat, are people who like fact finding. They like collecting information. And then I help teach them how to summarize to the top 2 or 3 bullet points. And then I can make a decision based on that. I can go deep into fact finding if I want, but I find that my brain wanders away fairly quickly if I have to do the research.
It's not your nature.
Nah, no.
Rather figure out on your own through exploration.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. But I think that because I teach it with all my EOS clients, right, Colby, and I think that one of the things that's really important in there is recognizing where does your brain go first when you're working? And mine immediately goes to innovation, visionary, right? Asking questions, And I think that's why I'm good at what I do, because I am insanely curious. I will ask all the good questions, all the stupid questions, and my brain immediately does connections. Like when we were kids and first of all, there were newspapers, and then they had the mazes in the
Yeah.
newspapers. So my brain always goes to the end first and then works backwards. That's just how it sees it. And so that's how I need to find people that can be my buffer between the people who are actually doing the work, following the processes, and me. Because if I don't have that buffer person in between that can translate on my behalf to the others, then I scare a lot of people. My favorite question is, wouldn't it be cool if? In fact, somebody actually gave me a keychain that said, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" And that, as soon as I asked that question, my team was like, "Oh my gosh, where are we going now?" So having that person that can, my integrator, right, that can really say, "Sandi, these 10 ideas that you've come up with, 9, let's give them to the competitor instead. But this one is going to be the one that's going to jump us up."
That's one of the things that I absolutely love hearing. That exact logic of, in business, people, I think that a lot of people by nature are afraid to fail or afraid of judgment, or they might don't want to disappoint someone, that really that disappointment is just an expectation that they think that person holds of them. It's in their own head. And you're like, look, 1 out of 10, home run. Like, we're doing the best. And I love the energy behind it, because
Yeah.
really, I mean, what is it? Edison, he said, I just didn't fail 1,000 times, found 999 ways to not make a light bulb work.
Yeah.
It's the same logic, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, there really is. I mean, it's all the cliche stuff that you're not failing, you're learning. But I find that's really true. I experiment through life. So it's not life and death for me. It's an experiment. It's an evolution. It's how can we, that didn't work. I mean, when you're going to the moon, right? I give this example all the time. You have your rocket ship and you're like, okay, well, let's point it at the moon. But they don't just go straight. There are thousands of course corrections between here and the moon, so that because if they're just like a fraction of an inch off on Earth and they never make a course correction, then by the time you get to the moon, you're hundreds of thousands of miles away. So I'm just course correcting as I go along based on the questions I get.
Amen. How about that? How
Yeah,
about that? People take the cliche, oh, aim for the moon, fall in the stars. And you're like, no, aim for the moon and iterate, Like,
exactly.
I like that frame better, because it doesn't accept defeat. It just accepts that, hey, look, there's not a straight line. Like, there's
Yeah,
actually your own unique path to get to where you want to go. So you mentioned family in the beginning with the Sherpa analogy and the sisters, but let me ask you, how do you juggle family with doing all the entrepreneurial things and travel around the globe? It seems like it's quite important to you from some of the questions I asked before the show. Can you tell me about how you live an EOS life that keeps your family included?
yeah, yeah. I am okay. So is this confession time? So I have only been married once, and it was inadvertently to a Maasai warrior. So,
Huh?
yeah, after my 3-hour negotiation between my guide and my husband, we found out I'm worth 13 goats and a cow. But and I couldn't have children. So my nieces and my nephews are who I pour all my love into as kids. So I have a little bit more freedom by not having an immediate family, but the family that I have is, my parents. My grandmother just died last year, and all my nieces and nephews, and now their kids. I think what's important to me is the legacy. So, going back to your question about, the EOS life, my EOS life has always been around, well, the fun part is the travel. But
Mm.
the other part is the legacy, like what kind of impact am I making, and what am I giving to my kids? So the my nieces and nephews I had when they were like preteen into their teens, I had the flight benefits. And
Mm.
so I would take one kid out a year, and we'd travel between 9 and 12. They could go anywhere in the US that they wanted. And then when they became like juniors or seniors in high school, we'd go to whatever country their language had been studying. But the idea behind it is that I wanted to teach them a couple of things. One, they had to pay for something on the trips. So like they either had to pay for, when they were in the US, they had to pay for all the lunches because we always went to Disneyland or Disney World, right? So they had to save up money and learn how to be financially responsible for that. When we went traveling internationally, they had to pay for 2 or 3 nights of hotels in the food, right? But then I was also teaching them how to be responsible travelers, right? Don't be jerks. Don't be the ugly American traveler. So I wanted to give them both financial learning and then also how do you be a good person in the world? And then you flip that to my legacy. Ross, I believe so strongly in being able to leverage the power of education and entrepreneurship that 10% of everything that comes into my company goes to 3 nonprofits that supports that. So the Malala Fund, so we can help girls around the globe go to school. I work with Zoe Empowers. It's a ministry that teaches children who are head of household because their parents died of AIDS how to take care of their brothers and sisters and teach them how to be entrepreneurs. And then locally, the organization I'm on the national board is Empowering Women as Leaders. And we help women who are non-traditional age, meaning 23 and above, go to college and get a scholarship and a mentor. So I think that's the thing that drives my EOS life is I have a strong purpose and I have insatiable curiosity. So how do I help other people have the excitement and the opportunities that I have?
I would venture forth and say no one ever accused you of having a scarcity mindset.
No.
And people think that tithing, as a religious practice of 10% of your income to the church, like it's similar, but you're like, I'm going to take control of this, contribution giving back. And I think, you know, you're really treating the world as like an extended family.
Yeah,
You're helping not just your backyard, but the world is your backyard. And
right.
I think another thing that I got from that story, Sandy, is that you might have been at sometimes the coolest aunt, like the cool aunt for sure, but
That's my job.
you're a fair aunt, right?
Hmm.
There's a big difference between just giving someone something forever, but then holding the expectation like you're going to earn this
Yeah,
through learning, right?
right.
Entrepreneurial education. And really, I'm glad that you did it because now I know the story of your dog and you kind of did a miniature like dog thing that happened to you and you paid it forward, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Huh.
yeah, absolutely.
So what I know the answer because I asked it, but I'm gonna have you say it anyway. What's one challenge? The world is your backyard that if you could solve would make the most significant impact. And when I ask this, some people are like, "Oh, you mean in my business? Do you mean in my personal life? I mean like anything." And your answer that you gave needs to be shared.
You're gonna have to remind me.
Well, it was something about half the world's population.
Oh yeah, okay. So
A big chunk of a couple billion
yeah, so
people.
that ties right into where I came up with this, right?
Yeah.
It was in 2020 that I was saying, okay, what is my true purpose here? How can I do it? And it also tries channels back to my travels in that when I first started traveling, what I realized was how different everybody was and everything was. But the more I traveled, the more I realized how much we are alike and that we want the best for our families and we want the best for our kids. And I found that there were a lot of places that I went to that they couldn't afford to send their girls to school. They couldn't, or they didn't have the ability to send their kids to school. And were like this, the Zoe ministries, right, where they were unable to, now the kids were in charge of all their brothers and sisters. And what I decided is if I can help half of the world's population, girls and women, be able to be educated so they have the ability to think bigger. That's part of what I do in my business too. Is like yesterday I was working with a team that they're having to riff half of their people because the school district has to cut their budget. And I'm like, so when we hire back, you can't just hire a seat. You've got to hire people that can help you get to the next growth level that you want. And so it's the same thing, here with the education is I need people to be able to see, or I want people to be able to see bigger than what they see in their own small world. And then the ability to learn entrepreneurial skills is, can I take care of myself?
Mm.
Because if I can take care of myself and I can take care of my kids, then I feel like I can do more. And that's one of the things that we found. Like when you give microloans, that, no offense, Ross, but women typically pay it back faster.
None taken.
Yeah. So, yeah, as representing the whole male gender, yeah.
You
But
got
I
me.
think that's really important for me is, both locally in my family and then worldwide. If we could get half of the world's population to be educated and to have the ability to take care of themselves, I think creativity would blow up. I think that there would be more peace that would happen. And I think there would be more negotiations. And I think there would just be more opportunities in the world for everyone to.
Nothing wrong with trying to take care of half the planet. I don't think. I've heard a lot of BHAG goals, but that might be one
Yeah,
of the BHAGiest. And I love it. I think you're suited for that type of mission. So we
thanks.
need more of that.
And that's where I think, because I, of course, tithe to the church, but that's where the 10%, I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
And I think when I'm working with the prospects who become clients, part of what draws them to me is I tell them the story. This is what happens when you work with me. 10% of your money is going to go here. And I think because I get a lot of family businesses that come work with me, and they are already legacy minded, and how can they expand it beyond the legacy of their family into the legacy of their community and their business. It's pretty exciting.
What are some of the commonalities of challenges within the family business that you love solving the most for clients, right? That are maybe unique to family, not every business, but like family specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that a lot of my family businesses, there's a couple of ways it can go. One, they can not talk about issues at all because
Mm.
I have to sit next to them at the Thanksgiving table and I don't want it to blow up. So I don't want my family to blow up. Or they could do the opposite. And when there are issues, it doesn't matter if it's personal or business, it's going to be yelled in the room. I've had literal, knockouts in the rooms before.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I think helping, I do this of course with non-family businesses, but I think in family businesses, helping them learn healthy conflict. So not just conflict, but healthy conflict. How do I say it out loud? Because in most families you already have, well, we're going to be together anyway, so just tell me, right? Rather than I feel like they're going to fire me. So there's probably less feeling of I'm going to be fired.
Mm.
So, but here's the thing, we are terrible mind readers. So
Oh
if
yeah.
if you don't say it out loud, then we as a leadership team, we as a family, we can't work through it. And I had one of my families when they started with me, there were 7 on the leadership team and 6 were family members.
Oh my goodness. How
Yeah.
about the seventh person? Were they
Yeah.
like, who do I have to marry?
Exactly, exactly. And so I told them in the prospect meeting, in the EOS overview, I was like, okay, I'm just going to tell you up front that more than likely half of you won't be on the leadership team a year from now. And they're like,
That's bold, Sandy.
yeah, yeah, be bold, one of my values. And then I never said it again. And then a year later, there were 3 family members out of a team of 7 that were on there. And as we worked through it, what we found is that three of the people, they didn't want to be on the leadership team, but the owners didn't know what to do with them, so they put them on there. 2 of them left the company and just became owners only, and it was so good for the business.
Sure.
The guy who founded it, he and his wife, he was the visionary, she was the integrator. He came in one day and he has beautiful white hair and he had the handlebar mustache, and he came in looking so dapper. He had his little bowler hat and he had his 3-piece suit that was striped pinstripes, and I was like, man, you looking good. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to go have lunch with this guy. And in our sessions, if you're not there, then you're not on the team, because it's part of it's it's holding it sacred, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this whole time, they hired me because they wanted him to be able to retire. And he had been fighting it. Y'all are forcing me to retire, blah, blah, blah. And when he walked in and he told me the story, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So are you retiring now? And he stops and he looks around the room and he goes, yes. Turns
No
around, walks
way.
out. Yes. He had finally felt like the team was a team that could make this his retirement. It was fantastic.
I have to tell you a real quick story. See, I've seen family businesses before where the patriarch, the guy with the very well groomed mustache has been
Yep.
doing it for 50 years. He's 76, start right out of
Yep.
whatever, brings his wife and his daughter and all the people in the family in. And the saddest thing was, I'm going to die at my desk. I can't imagine doing something other than this.
Right.
And I think after hearing your story, maybe that came from a place of he just didn't trust that his family around him was
Exactly.
equipped. And it
Exactly.
might not be because he wanted to. It might be because he felt he had to.
Yeah.
And that's a really powerful story because, what you did was you let the guy quite literally live the EOS life where he could finally let go.
Right.
That's cool.
Yeah. I've had several of those that's been really fun that they did it so that they knew that their kids had the plan and they knew how they could keep the business going. So the founders were able to leave. It's fantastic.
Of my 4 grandparents, 2 of which they grew up dirt poor, like farming family, real dirt poor, not in America. And so my mother had the hardest work ethic of anyone I've ever met. Between raising my brother and I, working 3 jobs, up at 5 in the morning, in bed at the same time, and the entire 16 hours of those days on weekends, it was just go mode.
Yeah.
But didn't she always, I felt undersold, maybe because she said, well, you guys are all going to go to college and school is really important because it didn't happen for me. So I feel like your message, if that would have hit her, maybe would have changed life. Because you take someone that's that hardworking with those kind of things, but she didn't see it yet. She didn't know that was a possibility.
Right.
That you could go back after, my brother and I are older, in your 30, 40, 50, whatever, go back to school. So I love that mission. I just want to share that with you.
Thank you.
But my other grandparents, entrepreneurial as anything. And I grew up with 2 family businesses. One was a real estate brokerage my grandfather started and father worked in. And I said, I'm going to work for the family business. And they're like, the hell you are. They said 10 years on your own, then come back. And my grandfather's. And I'm glad they said that. I'm glad they said that. Because when I finally did come back, the hardest person to work for was in my life? My dad. We would and I love my dad. We're best friends. We're close. But boy, and I think he was so close to retirement where he's like, EOS, nah, I'm just going to, ride it and do the thing. And he's finally retired now, which is the best thing ever. Now it's just being grandpa and dad. And his side of the family, this is the crux of the story. They started a company in, I want to say 1895. This was after, if you're familiar with Hershey chocolate, the father was president of Hershey chocolate and tied with Milton Hershey. And then the son was like, well, not going to live up to that. So I'm going to start a pharmacy, right? Selling soda, chocolate, liquor, tobacco, because that was part of the pharmacy then. And that existed until 2010.
Wow.
And the generation that stopped, everyone's named John. My real first name is John. They're like, I'll be a pharmacist, but I'm going to work for corporate. This is too much stress. And then his son, my cousin, is like, I'm not touching drugs. No drugs for me ever. And I just love that what your mission with family business is. It's it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Anyway, felt compared to share.
Exactly. Because I think, as one of my friends says, sometimes Aunt Matilda just needs to be Aunt Matilda and not be on the leadership team.
Yeah, totally agreed. So you've done a lot. If I had to ask you, what are some of the key milestones or achievements in your career that you'd like to highlight? Could you tell a story or 2 about it? I'm sure there's a bunch, but that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Whittle it down.
I think one of them was creating this corporate university. I had been working at my corporate job for 10 years and was ready to go do something else. And they came to me and they said, we have this idea to create this university. Would you be interested in starting it? I'd never done anything like that before, right? And I was like, of course, that would be fun. And so they said, so it's not in our budget, so we're going to give you $10,000, 400 people. Good luck. And 7 years later, I had a $17 million budget, 4,200 people around the globe. It was fantastic, right? Because I figured out from a scrappy perspective of how do I use the knowledge that's already in people's heads rather than trying to give them just training, So I
Right.
train subject matter experts on how to talk about what they do, and then we just captured everything on video and put it up on, at the time, SharePoint. And it was such a good hit. And I hired people around the globe, and I was able to get people that could speak local languages as well as English. And I think that was huge. I think that was a really big impact on both the company and my abilities. Again, like I said, everything I did in that company was entrepreneurial. And I think another one of my big,
Can I stop you quick,
yeah,
Sandy? I want to stop you. The problem of delegate and elevate doesn't seem like it was ever it was more of an opportunity for you,
yeah,
because it seems like on one hand this company trusted you an awful lot, right?
yeah,
And you probably really respected and cherished that trust and trusted an awful lot of people to make this a real thing over the
right.
course of time. And I think trust comes down to it, right? Because when you trust yourself, you can trust others.
Yes.
And I think you proved that. And the other thing is, that's so refreshing to hear, because it's like extreme example. If there was a 10 on trusting and delegating, you'd probably be there too with Quick Start. Because I've seen people that are absolute geniuses not be okay with having smarter people than them around them, and you're just like the example of, well, if you flip that on its head, look how much better life can be for everybody.
Yeah. When I was little, Ross, my dad was a traveling salesman. And so we saw him on the weekends. And one time, all by myself, he took me on a walk. So it was very exciting to be with my dad by myself. And we were walking around, and he was giving me all these life lessons. And one of the ones that he gave me was, you cannot be the smartest person in the room.
You're in the wrong room.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Everything that I do, I'm like, who is smart in this? Because I'm not, and I don't want to take the time to learn it. Who's already smart that I can leverage, that we can partner together and have fun doing this?
That's chef's kiss. So good. So you also helped the championship golf course and luxury resort. Can you tell me that story?
Yeah, Cordoval. So Cordoval it's a luxury resort and championship golf course in California. And when they called us, COVID had just hit, and they decided that they wanted to, in the hospitality world, they call it going off the flag. They wanted to become independent. And only 5% of hotels that come off of the flag profitable within the first 1 to 2 years. And 18 months after working with us, 18 months after going off the flag, they not only were profitable, but what I love about this company is that they are very people centric. And so they gave benefits to their employees, which most people in the hospitality industry don't. They focused on how do we get our people above market rates. And in California, that's expensive out there
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
And because they wanted to be the place that people wanted to come work. And I love the visionary who runs that place, how he thinks about things, and how he's able to pull people, kind of what you were talking about before, right? But how do people who are big visionaries many times have a hard time describing what they see because they are
Mm.
so far out. And so he is a master at inspiration, at helping people recognize where they are really good and why they are good, and enticing them to be more curious and to think bigger. And so I think I partnered with a woman in New York. It was really her client, and she does all the leadership work, and then I do the EOS work. And so we had the business systems and the people systems at the same time that we were doing that. I would do a day of EOS, she'd do a day of leadership, and we would take them through strategy. What all do you need to do? And I'm just they've won all the best places to work, and they're like in the top 15 or 20, I think, of the golf courses in the nation, and their goal is to, be in the top 5, and they're doing it with by creating the infrastructure which EOS does for them, and the culture that says, "Oh my gosh, I love it here, and I want to bring other people who want to grow in it." So we don't have to do a whole lot of going out and finding people. Their people bring other people in who are rock stars. It's very exciting.
A couple of ways I could ask a follow up question, but number one, probably most importantly, is that's an example of what good looks like for a visionary, right?
Yeah.
No one's arguing that. But like, what characteristics do you think, if you could have a recipe book for like a good visionary, what characteristics would they have? What are the ingredients?
I think probably the first one is realistically recognizing where you're good and where you're not. What do you like doing? What do you not like doing?
Self
And then,
awareness.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it plays right into the delegate and elevate tool too, right? But what are the things that, because like I'm working with a visionary right now, and I had him do the delegate and elevate, and the quadrants are, what do you love doing and you're great at? What do you like doing and you're good at? What are you good at? But good God, if I never had to do it again, yay, because that's most people's personal hell. And then the easy one, what are you not good at and you don't like doing? But most, I can't, the studies show different things, but anywhere between like 70 to 90% of all leaders' time is spent on things below their pay grade. So the more things you can take off of that bottom half, that elevates you up to being able to do the things that you're great at and you love doing, which gives you more strength and more energy, that enables you, like the leader, the visionary that I'm working with right now. I just had him hire an integrator, and he goes, "Oh my," I was talking to him this morning. He goes, "God, Sandy, I know you kept telling me I'd have more time to actually dream and think and vision us into the next future." But he said, "I had no idea how much time I was spending on the things that I had to do, but hated." And so I think awareness is really huge. And then I think recognizing what are the characteristics that you need in a person that can fill those things, that for them, the things that are on your bottom half, that things that are below your pay grade, the things you don't like doing, that they love it. Right.
Seeking for and attracting help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think also just being consistently curious,
Mm.
because visionaries have to see beyond their little part of the world, right? What's going on in my industry? What's going on in other industries that could impact me? I mean, the chaos, the messy middle that we're in right now in this political environment and everything else that's happening, you've got to be able to see beyond the whack-a-mole issues that you're having in your own company. Let the integrator handle that stuff. What do you see that's coming so that you can make better decisions for your company to help mitigate some of those?
I want to touch on the curiosity as being a key ingredient because you have no lack of it and you've displayed it time and time again in this conversation. But one thing to double tap on with the political, I think anyone listening, this is a challenge to you. A buddy of mine famously says, smash your phone. What he means is, what if you traveled to 52 countries and
Uh-huh.
like didn't look at the network television news or like didn't scroll for all the news updates and you got to know people in areas?
Yes.
Like what would life look like then? That's part of it's curiosity, part of it's adventure, part of it's like just I think and this is a macro assessment, but uh, I would assume that a good visionary really doesn't need to spend their free time looking at stuff like the news that might just they're self-aware enough to like how is this going to help the mission, and it's probably
Right.
not.
I just got back from a week in Dublin, Ireland, and I find Uber drivers fascinating. And so I'm asking lots of questions, and then I'm over there, right? Anytime I'm out of the US, I'm always asking, so how are things going in your country? And how is what's going on in my country affecting y'all?
Sure, I want to
And
hear from
so
the source.
that's where I'm getting it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's where I'm getting my information, is how is it impacting people on the ground?
honestly, the Uber driver thing really such a great litmus test, right?
Yeah.
because they, by their nature, have to interface with so many people in a one-to-one or
Right.
one-to-small group. Craziest Uber story I've ever had. I spent a lot of time Ubering when I was younger, before, different life, mostly around, being social, partying. Didn't want to drink and drive. That was the thing. And one Uber driver, he was really quiet, but there's something about him. I felt like at the time, maybe that was a few beers that I was like, you want to ask me something, but you're not asking me anything. I was like, so what? Tell me your story. And it was a long drive. He's like, well, I have severely bad social anxiety. And I was like, you're doing a tough job then. He's like, yeah, I started a company that did knockoff iPhone chargers, and we were global, and I made $100 million exit when I was like 31.
Yeah.
I don't need money. What I really need to do is reconnect with people and like not be lonely and be anxious. And I thought, I'll never forget that story. I was like, first of all, good for you, man. But second of all, talk about self-awareness, like identifying a gap, whether that business doesn't matter at this point. It's like in your life, and like overcoming a fear. I have the utmost respect for people that do that.
Yes. Absolutely.
What is one fear, which may not even be a good question, but I'm going to ask anyway. What is Sandi afraid of, if anything?
Well, the first word that comes to mind is stagnation.
Mm.
I'll be 63 in July. And I find that some of the friends that I had in high school, like they've already retired, and it's like they have just settled into a life of watching TV and hoping the grandkids come over. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm traveling the world. I'm learning a new language. I'm doing, not that my life is better than theirs, but I feel like I've got a good 40 plus more years to go. I don't want to sit and watch TV. How can I make it interesting?
Yeah, you don't want to collect moss, right? Rolling Stone
No.
gathers no moss. That's a really good fear because you have control over it, right? Like
Yeah.
you're in charge. Like if people are like spiders or heights, it's like, I mean, that's an extraneous situation that you kind of have agency to like, either confront or not.
Right.
But your thing is completely within your locus of control, which I think is a really important thing for anyone listening. It's like, choose your fears wisely.
Right.
I think, because they could be great.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of being stagnant, well then roll on, Sandi. Like, go ahead. Don't have to be stagnant.
Ross, I'm a big O neuroscience geek. And one of the things, our brains are agnostic. And whatever we tell our brain is true, our brain looks for a way to prove it's true. So if we say, I am afraid, if we say, I hate this, if we say, I always look for the bad guy, whatever it is, your brain will focus on ways to prove that there's reasons to be afraid, and there's, all that. And it, like the client I was talking with this morning, I said, how do we flip it? Right? If you focus on, I am super curious about what's coming, instead of I'm afraid about what's coming, then your brain's going to look for ways to say what else could be true than being afraid.
Here's another frame that you're going to love. Instead of saying, I don't know how to do this, you can ask, who knows how to do this already better than me?
Absolutely.
You've done it 1,000,000 times.
Exactly. 10 times easier than 2 times.
Dan Sullivan, great guy.
Yeah,
sure. I haven't met him, but would like to. Sandi, we're approaching one of my favorite parts of the conversation. And I could, quite honestly, if there was more time in the day, I would talk to you for another 3-4 hours. But I don't have that privilege just yet. The question, this is a new thing I've been doing. Hear me out. The last guest I talked to has a question for you. Didn't know who you were. Didn't do anything. It's a blind question. And they said, this is great for you. What is your most exciting version of the future, Sandi?
Oh my gosh. So the very first thing that popped up is I have done hot air balloons in 6 of the 7 continents that I've been to. And I love it. I love the different perspective, right? And so the day before I turned 30, I did parachuting, because I wanted to, if I was going to die, I was going to die in my 20s. So wouldn't it be cool at like 90 to be able to parachute out somewhere fun? That's just the first weird thing.
Age is but a number.
Yeah.
Age is just it's a number. Some people could be 90 years old at 30, and you could be 30 at 90 years old.
Yes, true.
What the heck?
Yeah.
All right. That's a great question. Now, here's the obligatory assignment for you. You don't know who my next guest is going to be, and I'm not going to tell you. But what question do you have for him?
What's the weirdest situation you've ever found yourself in and you came out better than you thought? Or you could change it from weirdest to scariest. What's the scariest situation you found yourself in and you came out better than you thought?
That's such an interesting one.
I've had a lot of those.
I don't normally do this, but could you answer that question for me? Pure curious. Just I
Yeah,
want to know.
yeah. So, like, one of them was I was traveling around Europe and missed my train that would get me into Venice at like 9 p.m. And so I ended up getting in about 2 a.m. So I'm by myself, don't speak Italian, speak Spanish very poorly. And I got into the train station, and my B&B, like, they wouldn't answer the phone. They don't answer after 10 p.m. And so, I'm sitting there trying to figure out, now, how am I going to get a place to stay? And it was just me and the train conductor at the very end, between my little Spanish and his little English. Found out he had a friend named Sebastiano, and did I want Sebastiano to come pick me up? And I'm like, okay, Lord, take care. And so 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm walking through Venice. The moon is going over the water. I mean, it's just gorgeous. And I'm thinking, I'm either going to have a serial killer or this is going to be the best week ever. It was fantastic. Sebastiano and his girlfriend lived on the top floor. They rented out the bottom floor. So for $25 a night, I was right on the water. I had the best tour guides. Turned out to be an
Better
amazing.
than you could have dreamed up, huh?
Absolutely. Never would have met Sebastiano any other way.
Not to get deep and religious, but it seems like when you have some faith, it turns out that you'll probably be taken care of
Yeah.
some way.
Yeah.
Huh.
I think between the faith and the 10 quick start that I tend to leap.
Good combo.
Yeah. My mom says that she has to worry for both of us because I don't worry enough.
Well, Sandy, it's been an absolute pleasure. And everyone listening, I hope you had as much fun as I did and learned a couple things, because there sure was a lot of nuggets of gold and wisdom passed on these stories. I don't run ads in the show. I don't want to. What I do ask is, if you liked it, share it with a friend. Give the gift that keeps on giving. Hopefully it's this conversation. Until next time, go out, be fearless, be curious, explore the world, dream big, and iterate your way to the moon. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Ross.